Biggly Piggly Wiggly on Spring Street has served 3 generations of shoppers since 1955 as the largest locally owned independent grocery store in the area. The Joseph family owners grew up here, so you know they're invested in the community. They provide the biggest variety of choice meats, the freshest produce, an in-house deli bakery, great wine selection, and more of your favorite brands. Every purchase gives you gasoline points so you can save at our pumps. Order online for pickup at bigglypigglywiggly.com. Biggly Piggly Wiggly on Spring Street. No one beats the pig.
The opinions expressed on Scoop Squad Truth Pod are those of the hosts and the guests and not those of WVRC Media. Scoop Squad Truth Pod, copyright 2024. Scoop Squad Truth Squad, LLC.
Welcome to the Scoop Squad Truth Pod, and I'm your host, Ashley Switzer, coming to you from Charleston, West Virginia, and we are pushing close to 100 episodes. It's creeping up.
Just like age, creeping up.
Ooh, don't say
I'm
that.
your co-host and executive producer, Ron Hughes.
Hey, Ron.
How are you?
You're here.
I'm always here.
Yeah. Where?
It doesn't matter where here is, as long as I'm here.
Ditto. So anyway, hey, Chris Walters is in the studio.
Yeah, Chris Walters.
He's we're so excited because anytime a sponsor of this podcast comes in the studio to record with us, it just makes me happy.
He's not only a sponsor, he's a friend and a fan of the show.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
We're excited to put those 3 things together.
Yeah, and he said, I told you earlier I didn't really have an intro. I need to think of it like a snazzy intro that I say every single time we record. And he's like, well, let's just keep the conversation going. The conversation is just normal and natural, and we'll just keep it going.
We don't want to make it fake sounding.
No.
You know, we're here, and we do this.
We're real people.
Yeah, we do this unscripted, so to speak.
Yeah. So, Chris, why are you here? I mean, we know you've got Integrity Insurance on Capitol Street. We know that you have pet insurance, which is amazing.
And it's at 16 Capitol Street.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly where we're at.
What's new?
Well, there's quite a lot going on. Of course, we're now into the campaign for county commission.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
And that's going. It's
starting
going very,
to
very
amp
well.
up, isn't it?
It is. It is. You know, I was unaware that really many people would be jumping in, and then everyone kind of jumped into this race. So it's going to be a neat race. You got a lot of options for voters to consider in this race, and I'm going to do the best I can to get my message out of what I want to do for Kanawha County, and you know what I've done in the past that makes me qualified for the position.
Yeah, because what did you do in the past that makes you qualified for the position? So, go ahead and tell us.
Oh man, so
you pay us to be here, so
you know I was fortunate to serve as a senator for Kanawha County. I was there for 4 years. And, you know, in those 4 years, I got a lot accomplished. I created the Broadband Development Council, which oversees all grants for broadband in the state of West Virginia, which has moved us so far along. There was a tremendous amount of waste and fraud with money that came in for broadband. And so I went out to create a transparent committee to oversee all the grants that didn't have providers sitting at the top or somebody picked by providers to oversee the funds. Instead, regular people that are involved in communities to then analyze the issues with data and get funds out where they needed to be. Do you like Sunday brunch?
I love I don't have it very often, but I do like it.
I can't live without it.
Why?
I did the brunch bill. The reason why you all have Sunday brunch is my work on that in the legislature to bring that to West Virginia.
What is the brunch bill? I don't even know
the
about
brunch bill.
There was a brunch bill.
Allowed everyone to enjoy mimosas on Sunday, and it exploded our brunch scene.
Okay.
You had to wait till, 2 o'clock on Sundays?
I don't indulge in mimosas on Sundays, but I know that there are people that do.
So a lot of restaurants didn't even open up for brunch or for early lunch.
Yeah, I did that whenever I was in the legislature.
Okay.
You know, it's funny. I did Child's Right to Nurse, where women would nurse their babies in restaurants. They legally could be told to leave. I made it where they could not be forced out because kids need to eat too.
I was one of those moms.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely normal, healthy, great for
Absolutely.
the baby. I mean, it's wonderful. I did that whenever I was in the legislature. The growler bill that allows growlers to be sold. I wrote the growler bill.
I do like a growler.
Had a beer named after me.
Not on Sundays.
And that was really cool.
That is cool.
I got a lot done with our roads, dedicating money to our roads, created a site for people to send where potholes were so we could get that information to the Department of Transportation so we could get on them to get that fixed. Did a lot of things that involved juvenile justice. We used to send more kids out of state for juvenile justice. So take kids out of a home and send them to Michigan, send them all across the country. Cost our state hundreds of thousands of dollars doing this. And I completely reformed the juvenile justice system of West Virginia to bring more of that money here to do complete wraparound services to help the family, to be able to get the kids to school and put more counselors in our school system so we can deal with some of those mental health problems.
So you've got a new project you're working on that'll help. Even though you're running for county commission, this project is something that'll help the whole state.
It will.
Statewide.
That's
Tell
right.
us about it.
So we have a huge problem in West Virginia of attracting school bus drivers.
Yes, we do.
I think everyone's aware of this that has a kid in school. And let's use an example. Let's say there's a county that has 35 bus routes, but they only have enough CDL drivers for 30 of those routes. Right now, they take the other 5 routes and add it onto the bus routes. Takes longer to get the kids to school. These bus drivers are working even more. What they do in other states, in Pennsylvania, Maryland, North and South Carolina, is those 5 other bus routes, they'll bid those out to a private company who has to provide an actual school bus. They're not going to pick them up in something crazy. They have to do the background checks on the drivers, just like the school system would have to. The schools will look into them too and approve it. They have to carry $5 million of liability insurance, which is more than what's carried on the school buses now. And we're going to allow these private companies to bid on those routes. Because if you look at private bus companies in West Virginia, they're busy Thursday late afternoon taking the sports teams around through the weekends. But when it comes to Monday through Friday mornings, Monday through Friday early afternoons, their drivers are sitting.
Yeah.
And so we got these qualified CDL drivers that could be there to get our kids to school where we don't have to check our phones every morning and hope our bus route's being ran.
Yeah.
And so it's just a way to bring in more opportunity to get our kids to school safely.
Well, that's super interesting.
So you are proposing a bill?
I did. I got help from a senator to sponsor the bill.
Who is this? Can you tell us the senator?
Yes, Senator Randy Miller
Okay.
from Preston County.
Okay.
He jumped right on to help out with it. I've got Rupi Phillips, who's also going to try to help pass the bill around.
I know Rupi.
Do you think the bus shortage also has to do with the fact that elementary schools are starting at super early? Like I've got preschoolers who get on buses at 6:30 a.m.
Yeah,
I wonder if that. I mean, they say. I just wonder if that's a contributing factor to, to these kids having to get on the buses so early so that they have enough buses to go pick up the high schoolers. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I'm sure it does, but also I'm sure a contributing factor is what we pay bus drivers in West Virginia. I mean, if you're paying somebody $25,000 a year to get up at 5 a.m. to go run these kids and to deal with kids,
because essentially it would be a part-time job.
Yeah, essentially it is. So I think a lot of it has to do, of course, with time, but also with pay. And the type of job that it is. And whereas these private companies that are running these charters in the evenings and running them in the weekends, like one company I know, Lone Pine, who actually is looking to open up a bus depot here in Charleston, in Kanawha County. He hasn't picked a place yet. We're looking at different places, but he's going to have a bus depot here. He wants to hire 20 individuals of CDLs to run these buses. He does WVU's bus transport, Fairmont States, Potomac States, and he wants to be able to do stuff like that here in Charleston.
So he'll do a mixture of county school work and other outside
and private,
work.
Like the Dirty Birds. He's trying to get them as a contract. And I'm sure there's a number of other bus companies that are trying to do the same thing.
So what's the bill number?
We're waiting for that bill number to be done. It's currently bill drafting, getting ready to come up.
Okay.
And once that comes up.
And then you have a lot of support for it.
Yeah, we seem to have a good bit of support for that. It's a good private-public partnership that helps our kids, helps our families, and creates a little bit more consistency when it comes to the school bus schedule.
Have you done any social media or put a place where people could follow up and look up more information?
As soon as we get this bill up out of bill drafting and a number assigned to it, I'm going to put it up on my social media. I've got a Chris Walters page on Facebook and get that out, and so that people can be educated by it
and follow the progress of it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah,
I love that.
It's a statewide public-private initiative. It solves a problem where we just don't have the bus drivers, and it allows us to be able to get drivers there that are paid more, have to have the newest technology when it comes to school buses. All that's put in the bill. They could also lease buses from the counties as well. So if the counties have extra buses that aren't being used,
Hey, we have an electric bus
yeah, we do. South Charleston makes those. They would have the option to do
right
that.
here in Kanawha County.
That's right. So there's a lot of benefits that could come from this. Newer buses for the kids to ride in, safer buses, higher liability if something does happen, and drivers are being compensated more.
So would that cause a problem with the county bus drivers as far as the pay?
I mean,
Like, you know what I mean?
I think they need to be paid more, period.
Yeah.
I think they do.
I agree.
And I think these county bus drivers will have the option
I'm
to
just thinking of
continue.
union, like, you know what I mean? If county bus drivers can leave, say, hey, this new bus company's coming in and going to pay a lot more per hour.
There's questions
Yeah.
of competition.
Yeah, then-
absolutely. As there
Then
should
the
be.
county has to step up.
Right,
the
right.
county, the state, I tell you, the benefits they get with the state, like PIA is a fantastic benefit. There are fantastic benefits
Yes.
that come with being a driver for
Yes.
the state, but also there's the lower pay.
Yeah.
And so that's an option people have to weigh for their families, but they should have the option.
Yeah,
And right now they don't.
sure.
And so would love to give them the option.
More
I'd love
options are
for-
good.
More options are always good.
Yeah, I think
And,
so too.
and Lone Pine's one example, but they're not the only bus company that would be bidding for these routes.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be able to see other companies bid for these routes. And anytime there's more competition, you're going to get a higher quality bus. You're going to get better drivers. You're going to get better pay.
My mind goes to the unions that represent them. It's like they're going to
Well,
be a
they
big.
kind of run the show.
They kind of do. But anyway, I it sounds great.
Yeah, you're going to have to keep us up to date on this.
Yeah,
Let
I
us
want
know
to
as
follow
soon
that for
as
sure.
You get the
Absolutely.
bill number so that we can promote it on social media. And
I want to write a bill.
I've
got
some
so
of our
many
posts,
ideas.
some of our posts
I can
last
help
week.
you. I can help you get in contact how to do it with some of your ideas and what to do. I can give you kind of the how a bill becomes law cliff notes like we used to
Yes.
watch when we were kids.
Yeah. What is it? The rock with what's the? We've sung it before. Schoolhouse Rock.
Schoolhouse Rock.
Schoolhouse
right.
Rock.
I'm just a bill, an ordinary
it.
bill.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that at some point. Hey, thanks for coming in.
We'll have you back.
Yeah, we are going to. You're going to miss a really exciting show because we were going to kind of run down a little bit of what happened at City Council. It was very electrifying the other night.
Well, I have the podcast on my phone.
Okay,
And so I'm not going to
so
miss.
then you're not going to miss it.
I'm not going to miss it.
You just have to
You
wait.
just won't be here for the to interject.
I won't.
and go
repartee.
what? Provide all the
But no, I won't miss the show.
gasps.
So we'll go ahead and take an early break and
Yeah.
let Chris leave, and then we'll get set up for the second and third scoops.
Yep.
And you're not going to want to miss what's going on now because it's a very heart-rendering story about children and CPS and
Yeah.
overreach.
Yeah, we've got some news about VOAD too. Some
Right.
pretty interesting news. Chris, have you been following that at all?
Absolutely. Yeah. And actually, I told Ron, whenever I was in the Senate, 2016 is when the flood happened.
Yeah.
The huge one that hit Elkview, Clendenin, parts of Sissonville, all those areas. And actually, in 2016, I went to VOAD to ask for help for our area for the bridges that had been washed out to all these homes. And they told me that they had 315 bridges already on their list of things to get to and basically to get in line. So they were not able to help our residents. And unfortunately, we're seeing part of the reason why.
Gosh, that's
It's so disheartening. It really is. Those people that experienced that travesty during the flood.
I mean,
I
when you
walked
said
into
that,
those
I felt like the
houses,
air was kicked out of me. I mean, really.
it kicks it out of my lungs every time I think about it because, man, those are great people up the Elk. No one expected what happened to them. I got to, I ran the distribution center for the flood aid at the Smith's grocery store right there in Clendenin. Brought in the health right to do tetanus shots for everybody, give free health care. Had food vendors set up every single day. People would
Yep,
pull in
I was there.
and go through the lines and everything. We arranged food vendors every day.
Yeah. It was devastating for sure. But
And there were great groups came out. The Amish came and helped. The Mennonites came in to help. We had tons of groups come in. But yeah, the Mennonites actually do labor to build bridges, and that's who we had to reach out to get help instead of our own VOAD here.
so
in
when
West
all of
Virginia.
this came to light, what was your first thought?
Back to the floods.
Back to that.
Back to the fact that
The people.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are your everyday people. These are great individuals who had a tragedy strike them. I mean, think about not just your house flooding, mud up there, all your contents destroyed, your biggest asset. Your house is your biggest asset. Your biggest asset destroyed. I mean, they didn't have flood insurance, the majority of people, because that was never expected to happen.
Right.
And so they had no insurance coverage. And then when they go for places to help,
yeah,
and
they're
you find
denied.
out you can't get help.
Yeah.
And it's just, I'll tell you.
It's like two slaps in the face with the whole VOAD situation.
It was. It just added to it, and it absolutely awful. What happened to our great people.
Well, we're going to take a break, come back to that, and you won't want to miss a thing with this episode.
Yeah, so we'll be...
And I don't say that very often, do I?
All right, we will be back for the second scoop right after this.
The Scoop Squad Truth Pod would like to thank our sponsors. Those include Chris Walters at Integrity Insurance, featuring auto, home, life, business, workers' compensation, and pet insurance. Pet insurance, you say? That's health insurance for your dogs or cats that covers special foods, illnesses, surgeries, and medication. They're on 16 Capitol Street in Charleston at 346-9181, or reach them at www.iigwv.com. Also by Jody's Mobile Services, offering steam cleaning, pressure washing, fleet washing, and auto detailing. We come to you. They're at 304-437-3164. And also by Eggplant on Bridge Road. Anything but ordinary. Go to eggplantshop.com. Also by T-Graphics on the west side, 312 Buchanan Street, 345-4816. Go to tgraphics.com for screen printing and embroidery since 1984. Again at 345-4816.
And you're back with the second scoop of the Scoop Squad Truth Pod. Hey, Ron.
Hey, Ashley. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks. Welcome back to you.
We want to quickly thank our sponsor, Chris Walters from Integrity Insurance, for being here. Also, our big sponsor at Piggly Wiggly over on Spring Street. Nobody beats the pig, and that is a huge store with lots of variety. Also, Jody's Mobile Services, steam cleaning, pressure washing, fleet washing, and auto detailing. He's at 437-3164. Also, our friends over at Eggplant, which is anything but ordinary, up on Bridge Road, and also at T-Graphics on Buchanan Street. Our friend Claudette over there does screen printing, T-shirts, and polos, professional wear, any kind of uniforms. Make yourself look professional and advertise your logo as well.
Yes, I love Claudette.
Leave anybody else out?
Did you say Eggplant? Did you talk about Eggplant in the lease?
I did. I said Eggplant up on Bridge Road.
That.
Anything but ordinary. That's where I get my Jack Black men's care products.
She's got all the
for
things.
shaving creams, body washes, shampoos.
And she's on with us very often. She's not here tonight, but she's
very politically astute.
Yes, and she and I were at a Kanawha County Republican Executive Committee meeting last night together. We were also at the City Council meeting on Monday together, which was a very electrifying meeting. The resolution calling for the ceasefire was not untabled. Beth Kearns had made a motion that council untable the resolution and vote on the ceasefire resolution, and that was once again voted down. Now I feel like there was a lot more in favor of untabling it than there was a couple of weeks ago. So that was a positive development, but at any rate,
it just wasn't handled professionally to begin with.
Well, the whole, I'm emailed and texted and called council people, and, the whole argument was it's not in our purview, and we sent a letter, and that should be enough. Well, is it in your purview or not? Because you sent the letter. So if it wasn't in your purview, why did you send the letter?
Right.
Because that is not what you said you would do.
Right.
I mean,
they went back on their word to this group of people. This collection of local folks who represent both the Jewish community and the Muslim community.
Yeah.
And they felt betrayed.
Yes. And I will tell you that when you are lied to, it is infuriating. It's hard to contain your emotions. And in the gallery that evening, it did erupt. Mostly the people that were yelling and screaming were younger. That it wasn't the older people; it was the younger ones who have a harder time.
It was calm until they were addressed a certain
way from Pat Jones.
And they felt disrespected.
And that's the whole thing. Like, if you would just, people really just want to feel heard, and not dismissed. And I think that was the biggest, and not be lied to, of course. Right. And then Mayor Goodwin emptied the chamber. She made everyone leave.
Including the press?
No, she didn't ask the press to leave. And I still am confused, like, if that was even legal, what she did. Because she kicked everybody out, regardless of whether they were being disruptive or not. And then held the rest of the meeting behind closed doors.
It's a public meeting. How do you do that?
I don't know. I really don't know.
You dismiss the ones that are being disruptive, but
right.
you can't dismiss everybody at a public meeting.
You can't dismiss everybody, but they made Lisa Payne leave, and Lisa Payne, she was just sitting there minding her own business. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have left. I walked out on my own accord because I was standing in the gallery, and as these people were walking out, Pat Jones started yelling at them, as they were leaving.
That's unprofessional.
It was ridiculous.
That's not what a public servant does. That's what a politician does. But that's not what a public servant does.
That's what they do. And the mayor never called point of order to him, never reprimanded him. And like I said, I ended up writing a letter to all of the city council people after that because I was live streaming for the Scoop Squad, and I was walking out towards the hallway. I had my phone on the people that were leaving the gallery. And my back is to Pat Jones, and he starts yelling and pointing at me. He starts yelling and pointing, and I ignored him until I couldn't ignore him anymore. And then I turned around, and I was dumbfounded. I'm like, what is wrong with you? And she never called point of order. She never, reprimanded Pat for talking to a member of the public that way. I mean, I've been heckled and before by Chad Robinson.
All of them play the victim
and
card.
Bruce King, and she's never once called point of order. And when she kicked everybody out and she closes the door and I'm still sitting there and she talks about respect and the public just needs to be respectful. And you know what? That's just insulting. Like, I don't need to be lectured by you. Why don't you talk to the people, the elected people who sat here and disrespected the public and the media? Why don't you ever, and that's what I said. I'm like, there's two sets of rules here. There's one for you guys up there, protected by this little gate, and then there's one for us. And that is just wrong. And it's hard to sit through. So I didn't really get kicked out. I left because I'm like, y'all are giving me a heart attack. I can't sit here anymore.
Well, you did the right thing.
So I just left. And then I went home and brewed about it and wrote up a letter or an email and sent it out, and I'm done with it. But
that wasn't the only excitement this week.
Just really quickly, I put a post up on Facebook that said that city council literally, that the city is burning down. And what I meant by that was, and you guys can go back and watch the video. I didn't live stream anymore after I left, but most of this happened after the council meeting was cleared out of the public. But Pat Jones literally talks about, they had that horrible murder, the 14-year-old that killed the 19-year-old at the smoke shop over there. He's talking about, Larry Moore is talking about murders. Pat Jones is talking about homeless encampments over there. Literally, a house blew up in North Charleston that Pat said, I have, reported this house to the building commission over and over and over, and the house blew up. Nobody ever did anything, and the house blew up. But hey, literally in the same sentence, good job, Mayor. Great job, everyone. We're doing a great job. It's surreal. I can't even. I don't know how you do that. Does that make sense to you?
No, it does not make sense.
Like, this is happening are you all hearing yourselves talking about the tragedies that are happening here, with our homeless population, with our crime, with the water situation, with the fire hydrants, but you guys in your echo chamber just patting each other on the back, and maybe that's why she had to clear clear the council chambers so that they could get back to feeling good about themselves. I don't know. Anyway, that's
telling them how great
how great they are. And to listen to Larry Moore, everybody, I encourage you to go back and look. You can get on the city website and you can look for the city council meeting that happened Monday night. And there's a video icon. If you click on that icon, you can watch the meeting and see everything that I'm telling you right now. And to listen to Larry Moore and to listen to Janine Faegre and to listen to Pat Jones disparage this group of people, it was, I couldn't believe it. But anyway.
Unfortunately, I can.
Yeah, they never cease to amaze me. So we had another development with West Virginia VOAD. Jenny Ganaway has retired, air quotes.
Not prosecuted,
nope.
But not disciplined, but
no.
But she was allowed to retire.
I wonder if it just makes me wonder, like, is she just getting out of there because now is she getting out of there before they arrest her? You know what I mean?
Well, she's getting out of there, before there's more investigations. Obviously the state is looking at that entity.
Will she just be? Is she a non-issue now that she's retired?
I don't think so. I think as they do investigations, if there were crimes committed by her, and if she's found guilty,
Here's the thing, though.
She'd be liable.
If it were me, I would have been out of there long ago.
Right. A lot of us would have been fired.
Because the timing, right? Well, even I would have probably just stepped down a long time ago. Like, this is not going to go away. I probably need to step down and let the organization recover. Okay. But if you're to this point that she is, and she stayed in it for this long, ride it out.
Yeah.
Because the timing, really, you retired, like you expect all of us. We're not stupid.
After, after the state,
the intense scrutiny.
The Senate Finance Committee investigated you, and
legislative.
You're under the eye now.
Yeah.
They're looking closely, and they're looking at see what happened.
I just would have gotten out earlier, or I would have said.
So Jenny Ganaway was the director of West Virginia VOAD, the executive director, and she announced her retirement. To spend more time with her family, which that usually is what people say when they're going out with a cloud over their head, and then VOAD expressed their sincere gratitude to Jenny for her leadership, instrumental role in the growth of VOAD, and unwavering commitment to the organization.
Yeah.
It's a good organization, but it had some bad leaders.
Yes.
And some board members that must have been asleep at the switch. And
if not, then they were compliant and they need to go.
And if Eric Tarr, Senate Finance Committee chairperson, is looking at you this closely, there's something going on.
That's right. And the timing is just...
So that one's not over with.
No, it's not over. In fact, today's Wednesday, or no, you guys, today... If you're listening to this, it's Thursday, but today that we're recording, it's Wednesday. And tonight, WOWK, I think, is going to release a news story. Kenny Bass has done several stories. Jordan Mead on WOWK has done a few stories.
So we'll share those too. If you're not a TV watcher, we'll share those stories. You can kind of get the gist of them.
And you know what? Soon, Ron, I want to bring in Shannon Snodgrass and Beth Kearns and
city council members.
Adam back, because the Settle and Stolniker audit for the city came out. Shannon Snodgrass mentioned on council floor, she brought up some numbers because several weeks ago we heard Chad Robinson praise the revenue brought in by the Civic Center and the Coliseum. But Shannon Snodgrass pointed out that actually the Coliseum is actually spending more money than it's making. So anyway.
Well, we'll dive into those numbers.
We'll dive into that later. But for now, we have another special guest in the studio. We have Miss Christina Knapp in the studio with us. Hello, Christina.
Welcome.
Hello.
Get a little closer to the microphone.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming in.
Yes.
Thank you guys for having me.
She has a pretty compelling story. Her children. How many children do you have?
3.
You have 3 children. 2 of them have been adopted.
Yes.
So CPS, your children were removed from your care. 2 of them have been adopted. One is not adopted. Still in the foster care system.
He's still in the foster care. From what I understand, I'm not not for sure about anything
Right.
because
Yeah.
nobody will inform me about
Let's go back
anything.
to the beginning and how all this started. Can you talk a little bit about your your background and kind of where some of the problems started.
Well, I was trying to get my son help. My son was showing some concerns. He was stealing from stores, stealing money.
In school, he's still in school.
Yes, he was still in school. He was when all of this started. He is about 9 years old.
Okay.
And he started showing concerns.
Okay.
So I was working with his doctor. He had some psychological evaluations, and I don't really truly ever believe he got a true diagnosis. But
was this a pediatrician that worked with him, or was it?
Yes, his pediatrician, which was Dr. Matustik.
Okay.
And
sorry, go right ahead.
No, and so we worked with sending him to some places to get some evaluations. Couldn't really get, and I really
it's hard.
believe.
It's hard. And I'm going to just jump in here because when you have a child that starts exhibiting some behaviors and perhaps starting to display some mental health issues, the resources are just few and far between here. Mm-hmm. It really is almost impossible.
Well, it is for a child that's under the age of 12.
Yeah.
We have no vicinities except for Highland.
Mm-hmm, right.
We do have Damas, but Damas isn't.
We don't have a lot of choices.
Yeah, we
right?
don't.
We don't have a lot of options.
And when you've got a child that has issues and you're trying to do it on your own
mm-hmm.
and get that child help, you call every organization that you know. Mm-hmm. You do everything that you can think of, and when everything's cut down, it's really hard. Mm-hmm. It really is.
So Dr. Matusik passed away.
Yes, he did.
Fairly recently. So.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
Yeah, that was.
He had a heart attack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, about October of last year of 23.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But he was specialized in adolescent medicine.
Yeah.
So when you reached out and you started contacting people, that kind of puts you into the system, right? Kind of.
It put my name into the system.
Uh-huh.
But what really brought all of this about was I was fighting with the insurance company to get him long-term stay at Highland.
Okay.
And the insurance company didn't want to.
What kind of insurance do you have?
At the time, my kids were on the state insurance.
Okay.
Okay.
Through DHHR.
Right.
That's where their insurance was. And I was fighting to get him long-term stay. They didn't want to pay for it. Mm-hmm. We got a peer-to-peer scheduled. The moment that the peer-to-peer was over with, they called me and told me they was going to approve his long-term stay. At that moment, Highland called me to release him.
At the same time?
Pretty much simultaneously. Mm-hmm. And I told him, I said, just give it a little bit. The insurance company is probably on the phone with your billing department right now, letting them know that his long-term stay was approved. Well, they said, if you don't come get him, that's abandonment. I said, just give it a little bit. They will, give you a call and you'll find out that he was approved for the long-term stay. In the meantime, they had called stating that I didn't want to come get him, that I was abandoning him in Highland.
Oh.
So who did they report you to?
CPS.
CPS? Okay.
Yes. And then a few minutes later, they had called and said, oh, yeah, we got the information. He did get approved. But
at that point, they had already reported you?
Yeah.
Highland wasn't interested at that point.
It was already too late.
So what happened next?
The CPS worker came out.
Uh-huh. To your home?
Mm-hmm.
How fast did that happen?
The next day.
Oh.
Yeah. I actually told her that. I said, you can come out today. I said, I would rather you come out today so you can see I have nothing to hide. But she came out the next day, spoke with me, and my parents was there at the time. Mm-hmm. And everybody said that he had issues and that we was actually in the process of filing an incorrigible on him to see if we could possibly get him help that I couldn't afford. Uh-huh. I mean, I couldn't afford the treatment centers that he needed. So we went and got the incorrigible, got everything scheduled, and the CPS worker pretty much kind of blocked that, stating that I was not wanting my son and not wanting to deal with the issues that he had. So I was trying to get rid of him. Mm. So once that happened, they wanted to meet with me 2 days a week. And I told them, I said, I work. At that time, I was working at a doctor's office. I said, I work. And I said, I can't do 2 days a week. I said, that's a little bit much for me working. And she wouldn't.
They couldn't meet with you in the evening? Would they accommodate your schedule?
No, they would not. She did not want to work with me. There was one day that I got off at noon, which was a Thursday. She could have met with me every Thursday, but she pretty much didn't want to work with me. She wanted it to be 2 days or nothing.
Uh-huh.
And
how long did that go on?
About a week, and then it was a week later they came with the order to remove the kids.
All of them?
Yes.
They removed all of the kids over issues with one child.
Yes. They said if you abandon one, you lose them all.
Huh.
That's amazing.
I want to jump in here because my husband and I have been married going on 31 years. We have 5 children. We had 4 at the time. Our oldest was 12. And we had a disgruntled older neighbor who did not like my children when the ball bounced in her driveway. She probably had some mental health issues, along with her adult daughter who lived right around the corner. And long story short, they were just very mean and vindictive. Well, I had a CPS worker show up at my house one day. And she couldn't tell me who, reported that I was leaving my children they were playing in the street and I was neglecting them and, all sorts of crazy, crazy stuff. And I can't express to you what my physical reaction to that was. I literally I was immediately sick to my stomach.
It's a visceral reaction.
It's a visceral reaction. I began shaking. I was terrified. I didn't even really know. I mean, a lot of reporting has been done, on CPS. And since Ron and I have been doing this show, we've had a lot of people reach out and contact us.
We have some real horror stories from all over the state.
And some people can't talk like you can. Some people feel like they can't talk. But it was a visceral reaction. And
but there's a lot of stories of abuse, of power, similar to your story.
But I was like you. I was like, come on, bring it. Come into my home. You'll see that because I wanted it stopped and I wanted it over. I did not want that hanging over my head. Even though in my head, I knew that my children weren't going to be taken, there was just that possibility, you never know.
Yeah.
So let's move past that because 2 of your children have been adopted and you don't feel like there's much hope for the 3rd child who's still in the foster care system right now. I feel like you've come to acceptance at this point. Am I right? Am I reading that right?
Yeah, you have to, because there comes a point when if the laws don't get changed, that there's really nothing more that can be done.
So let's talk about that. What laws and in your experience, what do you think? Where do you see the breakdown, and what do you think can make it better?
I mean, one thing that could make it better is when you file an order, they have to have evidence backing up the claims that's in the order. Mm-hmm. An order can't be filed on allegations, because once an order is filed and a judge signs off on it, a prosecutor signs off on it, they take that order as truth. And if you say anything in that order you don't agree with, they want to say that you're in denial. You can't see what's really reality. Mm-hmm. You can't understand what you've done is wrong. But isn't it innocent?
Until
proven guilty.
Yeah, they want you to roll over and play dead.
Yeah.
And CPS gets a lot of flack, for being short-handed, and not doing enough to protect children. But then there's these other cases where they just go way overboard.
So when you say order, you mean an order to remove children?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the court order that they have to get in play before they can come and remove the children.
And you're saying that they don't have to have, at this point, they don't have to have any hard evidence.
No, they do not have to have any hard evidence to even write an order, which follows back on my first order was that I abandoned him. I didn't want him. He was just too hard for me to take care of. Once they realized that he really truly had issues, they had to write an amended petition.
Order. I see.
And in the amended petition, prior to the CPS worker even writing it, which my first case was September the 1st of 2021, that evening after the court date, Dr. Matustik personally reached out to the CPS worker on my behalf and spoke with her and told her there was no medical neglect. There was no sign of any abuse that he knew of, and he knew because his mother was actually a neighbor of mine.
Yeah, you have a personal relationship with your kid's pediatrician.
Yeah, I mean...
especially here in this small town, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, he wasn't somebody that I... went to his house or anything, but...
connections.
Yeah, I knew his mother. I spoke with his mother, and she's a very, very sweet lady, and he would have known. He would have known that if there was any abuse at all, and he told him there wasn't. But in the amended petition, they put medical neglect.
Even after that
Even
phone call.
after speaking with Dr. Matustik, he even wrote a letter and putting his personal cell phone number on the letter stating to the judge to please, give him a call to write any form of anything and he will sign it, talk to them. Nobody reached out to him. They didn't want to know the truth.
So have you talked to any have you talked to anybody that can... what's your feedback? If you do talk to legislatures about having to have evidence before writing an order to remove children from home, what's the feedback that you get?
On that one, they really don't say much, but they say that we're working. And I have looked at some of the recent bills, and I know that they are working on some bills, because I know that previously when I wrote this, my suggestion was that a division of the police department, whether it be county, state, any division, be in charge with overseeing the starting of a case. And realizing that I was actually leaning in that direction, and now they've got another bill that they are trying to get the CPS system brought over to the state police department. And I think that's one of a great idea, because I think CPS workers should be held as the same standards as a police officer. A police officer has to go through an intensive interview process, training, psychological evaluations, and all of that before they can become a police officer. Why doesn't a CPS worker have to go through that? They can hire anybody off the street and put them into work. They should have to have a longer process to make sure these people are mentally capable of caring about the well-being of a family.
Okay.
Wow.
That makes sense.
Well, it doesn't get any better. We're going to take a break, but the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey says, is heartbreaking, but I think it needs to be said.
Yeah, and I want to hear more, because you've got more suggestions, and I'd love to.
Well, and there's some things in her story that are a little suspicious about some of the people that have tried to help her.
So don't go away is what we're saying. Join us for the third
right
scoop.
back.
The Scoop Squad Truth Pod would like to thank our sponsors. Those include Chris Walters at Integrity Insurance, featuring auto, home, life, business, workers' compensation, and pet insurance. Pet insurance, you say? That's health insurance for your dogs or cats that covers special foods, illnesses, surgeries, and medication. They're on 16 Capitol Street in Charleston at 346-9181, or reach them at www.iigwv.com. Also by Jody's Mobile Services, offering steam cleaning, pressure washing, fleet washing, and auto detailing. We come to you. They're at 304-437-3164. And also by Eggplant on Bridge Road. Anything but ordinary. Go to eggplantshop.com. Also by T Graphics on the west side, 312 Buchanan Street, 345-4816. Go to tgraphics.com for screen printing and embroidery since 1984. Again at 345-4816.
And you're back with the third scoop of the Scoop Squad Truth Pod. And I don't know that I ever mentioned your name, Christina, did I?
Yeah,
Okay,
you
Christina
did it first.
Knapp. Okay, great.
Yes.
Right here in Kanawha County.
Yep, and we are talking to you about your experience, horrific experience with the Child Protective Services and DHHR.
And you have some suspicions about child trafficking in the foster care system.
Okay, let's
try to tie that together.
Yeah, and what evidence? I mean, just playing devil's advocate here. What evidence makes you make such a claim? Like, first, tell us the claim.
Well, the number of kids that actually goes missing a year in the foster care system. I couldn't give you an exact number for the whole United States, but I know that as of last year, we had 300 children in West Virginia missing.
Turn up missing.
Yes, and they are saying that they are finding the kids in. I have no proof on it myself, but
there are stories.
Yeah, it's from stories that I read that children are being found in the sex trafficking rings.
That started out in the foster care system.
That started out, yes, in the foster care system.
Okay.
A lot of them come from Texas that are being deported over from Mexico and immigrants from other places, and there's no record of them.
So here I'm reading your notes. West Virginia has a child locator unit.
Yes,
right?
they do.
I did not even know that.
Yeah.
Is that an agency that any private citizen can call and get information?
I do not know on in depth on if they can call and get any information.
Right.
But I do know, if I'm not mistaken, I think the House of Delegates was a part of getting that started because there
were so many children going missing.
There were so many children, and a lot of the numbers weren't getting tallied because they're sending the children out of state to out-of-state placements. And once they go into the out-of-state placements, we lose track of them. And
well, with the concerns about child trafficking, in this era that we live in, you think the worst.
Yeah.
There's got to be a certain percentage. Do you remember, you mentioned in your story, you talk a little bit about a former Georgia Senator, Nancy Schaefer.
Yes.
And her efforts to pass a Child Protective Services reform bill in Georgia to eliminate the bonuses that counties receive for each child in the system that's adopted out. She wanted to make it impossible for CPS workers to write an order without evidential proof backing up their claims, and she wanted to stop orders that are based on the allegations. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes.
Well, that was actually a bill that was brought into place by Bill Clinton when he was president. I think it was 1997, 98.
Okay.
He wanted to make it so that different counties and agencies could get a funding for each child that was in the system. What it amounts to is if a child is brought into the foster care system, they get a set amount of fee. But if they can prove or say that the child has any type of disability, whether they're just taking that child and sending them to therapy, the state gets an additional funding for that child that's in the system. Then when the child is adopted out and it's not with a kinship adoption, they get an additional funding for that.
If it's outside of
Outside of the family, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So there's an incentive.
There's an incentive.
Not to keep it within the family.
Not to keep it within the family. And she wanted to put a stop to that because her fear was that the counties was more worried about the fundings that they was getting in instead of the well-being of the children, because they didn't make money if they reunified the child. They made money if they kept them in the system and adopted them out.
So, you also followed up the story about Senator Schaefer and what happened to her.
She was in the process of starting a documentary on the foster care system.
She and her husband?
Yeah, she and her. I don't know if her husband was involved in it, but I know she was working with another gentleman.
Oh, okay.
On the documentary.
Okay.
And it was tying in with the, if I'm not mistaken, the sex trafficking. It's kind of vague on truly what the documentary was completely about, because she was trying to keep it a hush-hush.
Right.
People's just speculating what exactly was in the documentary. Right before she was getting ready to release the documentary, her and her husband both were found in their home, dead. And they said it was a murder-suicide. And,
I remember reading about that.
Yeah, and they don't really truly believe that it was that, but every record of that documentary is gone. They can't find it. And everything she was working on is gone.
All the written records, all the footages,
yeah.
all the footage, all the scripts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that leads people to suspect that she
was onto something.
Onto something. I see. Yeah.
Yes, she was.
So tell us more about your experience and the things that you see in this broken system, and what can be done from a parent perspective that would be more, what would I say, parents' rights.
You were a single parent.
Yes, I was.
Just to make sure everybody's clear on what your situation was. So you had a pretty stressful job. You're pretty responsible. A job where you had a lot of responsibility. You had a fairly new car. You were in a clean home, fit to live in. And you just had one situation that could happen to anybody.
Yes. At the time when the case started with Highland calling in, I was actually in the process of trying to move my son out of Dunbar, because
Dunbar Middle School?
Dunbar. I was living in Dunbar.
Okay.
At the time when he was starting to get into trouble, and I was thinking maybe it was the children.
Community. Yeah.
It was the community. It was the children that he was running around with, and I was.
And there again, he's 9 years old. Is that right?
Yes. Well, when the case, it was 9 when all of his behaviors started.
Okay.
I mean, he was always hyper, energetic. Growing up, we was gluten-free. We was no corn syrup, no red food coloring, and we literally lived
Try to do
a
everything.
clean life.
Yes,
a
no
clean,
sugar.
healthy life.
Trying to live with not going on medication.
Right.
Because I didn't want to medicate my son, even though my family wanted me to medicate it, but Dr. Matustik respected my decision by wanting to try it naturally. He says, I can't say that it's going to be successful, but he says, at least you tried.
Yeah.
And it worked for quite some time. But once he started getting older.
Yeah, and making his own choices. And,
It's
harder
really,
to control that
it
diet.
didn't really work. So when we was in Dunbar, he started getting mixed up with some children, and it just wasn't a good situation. Stealing from stores, stealing from me, stealing from my parents. I mean, he was very, very smart. He could get into my bank account and completely, all my money was gone. He had got into my parents' PayPal account
Oh my goodness.
was spending money from their PayPal account. Found him with credit cards of, I don't even know the person. And I made him turn him into the police department.
So you were trying to get him out of
Yeah, I was trying to get him out of there. And he was burning his skin. He was just all kinds of serious behaviors that I was concerned about.
And you were doing what responsible parents do and go through the system and do it the right way.
Yeah. And at that time, I had to take time off work. I was on family medical leave because prior to me working at the doctor's office, I was doing what I could, cleaning homes, catering, baking, and doing things like that just to make enough money to pay my bills.
Right.
Because he was, as
Extra
you could say,
medical
he
bills.
was special needs.
Yeah.
You know, he had needs that was harder than most children, and he needed my 24-hour supervision. But then COVID hits, and it pretty much shut everything down. So I had to go back into the workforce and leave him in daycare, which he got kicked out of, and tried to make money that way because I couldn't make it the way I've been making it for quite some time. And it just put a really big damper on his.
Did you have any legal assistance or anybody? Nobody
No.
to go to when you were in
Nobody
this
to-
situation?
No,
that's-
nobody to go to.
That's just tough.
I mean,
That's just tough and
yeah,
scary
and I took time off work.
overwhelming.
Yeah, because he had to get when he had went in Highland the first time, and he was coming back out. We had tried him with my brother for a little bit, and my brother and his wife couldn't handle him, and they wanted to blame me, stating that I wasn't getting him the help he needed, that I was not doing what I was supposed to. But I did everything that I was told to do. Everything that I mean, if you've never dealt with anything like this in your life, you're clueless. You don't know what to what to do.
Sister, I
I'm
feel
glad
your
you came
pain.
to us.
I'm very glad that you came because you said in your notes, you'd look at me and wouldn't think that I have been through this, and I think that a lot of people look at me and wouldn't think that I can relate to some of what you're talking about, but I do.
Yeah.
And as a parent, there's no other worse feeling than feeling helpless to help your child. And not knowing where to turn. And that, that's the frustrating part of, I love where we live. I love West Virginia. I love Charleston. I love Kanawha County. But we need to do more for these kids that require more. And it's just, my heart goes out to you. But I want to talk more about some bills, some positive bills, because you started to touch on that a little bit. Some things that are positive in the legislature that you're seeing. Is there any more that you can tell us about that?
Yes, I try to keep up with everything that's going on in the legislature because it really is important that we know what's going on, because if these bills get passed and then the court systems or the HHR are still following the same policies, we have these bills here to say, hey, no.
Right.
They changed that.
So what you have here are some copies of bills that the legislature. This lady's very organized. She has copies of the legislative session agenda.
Yeah.
Tell us some bills we need to be tracking.
Bill number 312, Senate Bill 312.
Okay.
I have to look and see which
That's
one
okay.
this is.
Take your time. I'm going to put them in my notes while you're talking. And we'll list these too on the Facebook page of the Scoop Squad Truth Pod. So Senate Bill 312.
Yes. Is where in any case where the reporter believes that
This is a CPS report.
Yes. The child's suffered from physical abuse or sexual assault, the reporter shall also immediately report to the state police officers.
Okay.
This is trying to bring law enforcement
into the mix. Okay.
Yeah, it's got a lot of other
It
stuff.
takes away the primacy of CPS by itself.
Yeah.
As a decision
it's
maker.
it's kind of like accountability, right? Like you want to make sure you get it right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have some others that?
Yes, House Bill 4386.
Okay.
Okay. This bill is actually something that I had shared with Chris Pratt.
Chris
and-
Pritt.
Pritt.
who is running for Secretary of
Well, he was. Now he's running for state senate.
Oh, that's right. He's running against
Yes.
Eric Nelson in state Senate. Okay.
I had spoke with Chris Pritt about my situation and everything prior
Currently,
to.
he's in the House of Delegates.
Yeah, prior to me even pretty much getting any of this information together. And I told him that they used old cases where my daughter was molested. And I had reported it that my ex-husband had molested her and to CPS and reported it to the Women's and Children's, took her in there, let her see. Maureen Rutledge at the time was the lady that did the forensic interview with her. And I was the one that set that all up. I found out about it on a Sunday. By Monday, she had a meeting with Maureen Rutledge. And by that evening, I had a meeting with CPS reporting my ex-husband for molesting my daughter. They used that against me, even though in that case they had my name in it, but they stated that I did nothing wrong. I did everything right.
So what is House Bill 4386 address?
It is to expunge if a parent or an individual mentioned into a CPS case is found to be innocent, their name is wiped clean from the case.
It shouldn't be held against you in
And
future.
if I'm not mistaken, I may be reading into it wrong, but I think it's also if somebody calls and reports you to CPS and they state that there's nothing
They
to be
close the
found,
case,
they close
then
it.
it shouldn't be a case.
Yeah.
Should be
It
expunged.
didn't even start out to be a case.
Yeah.
They just seen, oh, well, this was a fake call.
Yeah.
Your name's not in the system anymore. And see, I had a neighbor just like you did. She got mad because I set a cone in the middle of our fence line because a road work guy left it there. So I set it in the middle of our fence line in the parking area so that if they needed to come back and get their cone,
It was there.
it was there.
Okay.
It was visible.
Yeah. And she got mad at me.
And called CPS?
Well, no. I had some words with her because she came over on my property and I told her to
Right.
get her little butt back on her property.
Right.
But, she got mad at me and I started getting CPS calls.
Yeah.
Coincidence,
So, yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
But we've got
People, we got to
just a
wrap
few
it
minutes
up.
left. But
Just don't do that. I mean, I get if it just, I don't understand. And you know what? If someone makes a false call to CPS,
They should be
They should
prosecuted.
be prosecuted.
Exactly.
Like that's another thing. You can't do that. That's serious.
it looks like the decks were stacked against you.
Yeah.
I hope from here, maybe with some legislation, it doesn't happen to somebody else.
And we're not going to have time to get to all the bills that you think that we should watch, but I would love to get a list.
We'll list them on the Facebook page.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Hey, Godspeed to you, and
Bless you.
Thank you for coming in and telling your story.
Well, thank you guys.
It's a very compelling story,
Thank you guys for having me.
and I think more people can relate to you than you probably think. So,
Absolutely.
thanks, Ron.
Well, thank you. It's been a full episode.
Yeah. Yes, very, very, very informative, very thought-provoking.
We'll investigate this a little bit further,
Yeah.
and maybe if you know of other cases or people that have, I don't know if you have a support group or of other
Yeah.
people that have.
And we did not
similar
talk about your
situation.
nonprofit.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to get to that, but you are really quickly working to come up to create a nonprofit to do just that, to be a support, to raise funds, is to help advocate for parents.
I haven't really got to thinking about raising funds, but my agenda for the nonprofit is to build a website
Okay.
and a questionnaire to build a database of information so we can see where the inconsistencies are in the system.
In the CPS system.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
we'll follow up with that.
Absolutely. Stay
on
in touch with
Facebook.
us.
Yeah.
I mean,
Good- and good work.
Some of these stories we've been working on here in the last week, it's had like 10,000 shares, literally.
Yeah.
10,400 plus shares. I get the report. So,
Yeah.
it's making an impact out there.
It is. It
Things we're
is.
doing, telling these stories that are compelling that don't get told anywhere else.
And that's what happens, that you start to build a network after that. So we'll keep in touch with you. Thanks again for coming in and telling your story. And Ron, I will see you next week.
See you next week.
And we will talk at you next week, Charleston. Thank you for listening to the Scoop Squad Truth Pod.
If you would like to tie your business with this popular podcast, you can contact me, Ron Hughes, to advertise at ron.hughes, ron.hughes, at wvradio.com, or you could call me at 304-342-8131. The Scoop Squad Truth Pod would like to thank our sponsors. Those include Chris Walters at Integrity Insurance, featuring auto, home, life, business, workers' compensation, and pet insurance. Pet insurance, you say? That's health insurance for your dogs or cats that covers special foods, illnesses, surgeries, and medication. They're on 16 Capitol Street in Charleston at 346-9181, or reach them at www.iigwv.com. Also by Jody's Mobile Services, offering steam cleaning, pressure washing, fleet washing, and auto detailing. We come to you. They're at 304-437-3164. And also by Eggplant on Bridge Road. Anything but ordinary. Go to eggplantshop.com. Also by T-Graphics on the west side, 312 Buchanan Street, 345-4816. Go to tgraphics.com for screen printing and embroidery since 1984. Again at 345-4816. Rebroadcast, retransmission, or transcription is not permissible without the expressed approval of Scoop Squad Truth Pod. Copyright 2024.